Violent criminals. They're the ones that make the news, the ones that make you lock your doors twice. They operate through force, fear, and often a complete disregard for the cost of their actions on another human being. Murderers and homicide offenders sit at the top of that list. Some plan it meticulously, calculating every detail weeks in advance. Others snap in a single moment that destroys multiple lives, theirs included. The crime is the same. The psychology is wildly different. Then come assault and battery offenders. They don't always intend to kill. They intend to dominate, punish, or just hurt. Bar fights, road rage, domestic disputes that escalate. Violence as a first language. Robbers add a layer on top of that. They want something specific. Money, jewelry, a phone. And they're willing to threaten or use force to take it. The gun isn't always loaded. The threat is always real. Kidnappers and abductors operate on control. They remove someone from safety entirely, sometimes for ransom, sometimes for worse reasons that are harder to say out loud. And domestic abusers are perhaps the most insidious of all. It happens behind closed doors to people who trusted them. The crime scene is the living room. The victim sleeps next to the offender. Property criminals. These criminals don't always threaten your body. They threaten your sense of security, your stuff, the feeling that what you've built is safe. Burglars break in when you're gone or sometimes when you're not. They case neighborhoods, look for patterns, and exploit the gap between your routine and your awareness. Thieves and shoplifters operate on a spectrum from the desperate teenager pocketing a candy bar to organized retail crime rings, systematically stripping store shelves worth tens of thousands. One is a cry for help. The other is a business model. Arsonists light fires for insurance money, for revenge, for the thrill, sometimes all three at once. They destroy what took years to build in under an hour and often disappear into the dark while sirens approach. Vandals deface what others have created, tagging walls, smashing windows, keying cars. It costs more to fix than anyone expects. Car thieves have industrialized their crime. Relay attacks on keyless entry, vehicle ID cloning, chop shops. It's an entire supply chain at work. White-collar criminals. These are the ones who wear suits. They don't look like criminals, and that's exactly why they're so effective. Fraudsters manipulate paperwork, misrepresent risk, inflate assets, and lie so smoothly that victims sign their own financial death warrants. Insurance fraud. Mortgage fraud. Securities fraud. Every version is just a different flavor of the same thing. Steal using words instead of weapons. Embezzlers are trusted insiders who skim. A little here, a little there, routed through shell accounts or expense reports that nobody checks closely enough. By the time it surfaces, years have passed and millions are gone. Money launderers take dirty cash and give it a backstory. Restaurants, car washes, shell companies in 3 different countries. The money goes in criminal, comes out clean. Tax evaders don't pay what they owe and build elaborate structures to make that legal. Or at least deniable. Insider traders bet on information the public doesn't have yet. The deal isn't announced until Monday, but they bought stock on Thursday. Ponzi scheme operators are perhaps the most theatrical of all. They promise extraordinary returns, pay early investors with new investor money, and keep the performance going until the math collapses and everyone loses everything. Cybercriminals. These criminals don't need to be in the same country as you. They don't even need to be awake when they rob you. Hackers breach systems for money, ideology, competitive advantage, or just to prove they can. The target could be a bank, a government, a hospital whose patient records are suddenly encrypted and held for ransom by ransomware operators who've decided that critical infrastructure is a negotiating chip. Identity thieves steal your name, your social security number, your credit history, and open accounts you'll spend years disputing. Phishers send emails that look exactly like your bank, asking you to confirm your password. The page looks right. The URL is 1 letter off. Online scammers run the full gamut from romance fraud to fake investment platforms to grandparent schemes targeting the elderly. They prey on loneliness, greed, and the basic human desire to believe someone is on your side. Organized crime. This is when an entire organization's business is crime, with hierarchy, discipline, territory, and revenue streams diversified across multiple illegal industries. Drug traffickers move product across borders at industrial scale. Cartels control routes worth billions, and they protect those routes with violence calibrated to send specific messages. Human traffickers are among the most morally depraved operators in the criminal ecosystem. They commodify human beings, moving people across borders through deception or force, extracting labor or sex while holding freedom as the price that's never quite paid off. Racketeers run protection schemes, infiltrate legitimate businesses, and make sure certain industries pay tribute to stay operational. Gang members provide the street-level enforcement and retail distribution that larger criminal networks depend on. Loan sharks lend money that desperate people take and then charge interest that compounds faster than any income can service. The debt becomes permanent. The enforcement gets personal. Sex offenders. Their harm is intimate, often invisible to outsiders, and almost always catastrophic to victims. Predators and child exploitation offenders operate in shadows, cultivating access to victims through trust, authority, or the anonymity of the internet. Traffickers who exploit through sexual coercion trap victims in cycles of shame and dependency that make escape feel impossible. Then there are stalkers who don't touch their victims, but they colonize their minds. Every notification, every unfamiliar car, every sound outside becomes a threat. The crime is the atmosphere of fear, and it's relentless. Drug offenders. They exist across a supply chain that starts in a clandestine lab or a poppy field and ends in someone's bloodstream. Drug manufacturers run illegal production operations, synthesizing fentanyl analogs, or cooking methamphetamine in operations that would look almost mundane if you didn't know what they were making. Distributors and dealers move the product at wholesale and retail, taking risk proportional to their level in the hierarchy. Street dealers face the most danger for the smallest cut. Smugglers solve the logistics problem, moving product across borders in car panels, shipping containers, human bodies, and increasingly through the mail. Political criminals. They operate at the intersection of power and impunity, where the resources of states or institutions become instruments of harm. Terrorists use violence against civilians to create psychological leverage, making populations feel that nowhere is safe and that normal life is a target. Espionage agents steal secrets that shift the balance of power between nations. One well-placed mole can compromise intelligence networks that took decades to build. War criminals commit atrocities under cover of conflict, calculating that chaos obscures accountability. Corrupt politicians and officials sell the power that was given to them by the public, converting access and influence into personal wealth while the systems they were supposed to maintain quietly rot. And it seems like it's happening more and more every day. Environmental criminals. They treat the natural world as a cost center to be minimized. Illegal dumpers and polluters bypass regulations that exist because someone already paid the price of ignoring them. The contamination doesn't disappear. It migrates into soil, water, and bodies. Wildlife poachers and traffickers operate a black market worth billions, decimating endangered species to supply demand for trophies, traditional medicine, or exotic pets. Illegal loggers strip forests for timber profit while the ecosystems that took centuries to develop disappear in a single season. It's another version of organized crime, with consequences just as grave and tragic. Petty criminals. They're easy to dismiss. The damage looks small, the pattern is not. Pickpockets work crowds and distractions with practiced efficiency, lifting wallets and phones in the seconds it takes to check a notification. Trespassers cross boundaries for reasons ranging from thrill-seeking to deliberate squatting, and the violation of private space carries real cost. Fare evaders chip away at the public transit funding that everyone depends on, one unpaid ride at a time. Graffiti vandals leave their mark on surfaces that belong to everyone, costing cities millions annually in cleanup that comes out of budgets already stretched too thin. Small crimes. Compounding consequences that make a big impact. And everyone pays the price, whether the crime happened to you directly or not, making petty crime anything but petty.